Welcome to the ultimate podcast experience with conversations about politics, religion, finances, and the meaning of life, and all the other subjects and stories that Nana told you not to bring to the kitchen table, and a whole lot more. Join our hosts, James the Red, You'll Be Back, and Sam the Slippery Smooth Producer as they settle the ultimate question, have y'all heard about this?
Me and Charlie went back to third grade.
We met when we were knee-high to a grasshopper.
I don't even have 100 friends.
All because it was Super Bowl Sunday.
You and I are going to fight today.
Whoa!
This is the Death Row Podcast.
Can I go back and talk about air conditioners?
I want that disease.
Well, I would have never released it from the Wuhan lab.
I think lunch is a great American institution. I think we all should be having lunch. I think it's one of those things that everybody should do.
We're rolling. Oh, yeah.
Yep. You got to stop slapping the table, Sam.
Good goodness.
I think,
It's June, folks.
I think Sam's got rheumatism.
Wait, are we recording?
Yeah, we were
Are
recording.
we recording?
A little warning would be nice.
I tried to say we're rolling, but I was gone.
But then you started dying. Oh, what's...
Oh.
The interest is up and the stock market's down, and you're only getting mugged if you go downtown.
Well, happy June the 14th, everyone.
This is our smooth lead-in. Hank Williams Jr. was apparently a prophet.
Yeah.
Very prophetic words for today's time if anyone was watching the stock market yesterday.
Oh, I wasn't.
So the interest rates are up, the stock market's down, and you're going to get mugged if you go downtown.
Or in Chattanooga, shot.
If you go to Chattanooga, you're going to get shot.
That's true. We have had a lot of shootings.
We have turned the page of Chattanooga being a really family-friendly, small to medium southern city. So now we look like Atlanta, and it feels like Atlanta when you go downtown.
You know, the weird thing too is on the news media, it's getting lumped in with all these mass shootings, and I guess maybe my definition of a mass shooting is different than maybe
like
what the
an
news media
active
is.
shooter situation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I've never thought of gang violence as a mass shooting. I
doesn't
thought that was kind of even though there can be collateral damage, you know, and
That's where a lot of the stats come from. Is not mass shooting, like is gang violence. Because I mean, if they kill 3 people, that's a mass shooting in some definitions.
I mean, it is a mass shooting, but it's not this. It's not lumped in with this.
If the victims are shooting back, then I'm not
Right,
sure.
right.
Well, also, if you have a culture, if you have a systemic culture of shooting and violence, then that's not, something that just happens in a mall in Topeka, Kansas. I mean, it's different.
I love it because every time they report on this stuff, it's like 2 groups of people just started shooting at each other. We're not sure if it's gang violence or not. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's gang violence. I'm pretty sure that a couple of moms didn't just draw guns and start shooting.
I tell you,
at each
I can't reveal my source, but I know a Chattanooga city police officer.
Oh,
And we were discussing after the first shooting that happened here recently, the one near Walnut Street Bridge. I think it was the Saturday night of the Riverbend Festival. So you hear Riverbend, and you hear like shooting. You're like, oh no, has some loon. Well, come to find out, it was unrelated to Riverbend.
Yeah,
it was up the street, but it was gang violence. It was kind of rival teenage gangs shooting at each other. So I was only speaking to this police officer because I was asking him, did he have to work it? And he said, yeah, actually I did. He goes, oh, but this is not over.
if it's the same police officer that I think it is, I actually saw him.
Yeah, you may not want to reveal our
No,
source.
I'm not going to.
If we both know him, then of course everybody knows him. But either way, he or she told me. There you go.
You just botched it.
Or they. No,
He told me that he said this is not over. This is not over. There's going to be a retaliatory shooting. We know these groups. We know their MO. And in 2 weeks, what happened? The retaliatory shooting happened. And it surprised me too. I don't know if you guys watched this in media, but there was a huge gang of people about midnight loitering on the street outside of a bar. When I say a gang of people, I'm talking about like 100 people
Is this
standing
one
out on the
down
streets.
on Macaulay Avenue?
Correct.
Yeah, that's when there was the big shooting there.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but this is a retaliatory thing that had stemmed from 2 weeks prior, kind of same actors. But here's what gets me. After that, they're like, oh, city's going to crack down on large groups loitering at midnight. And I thought, kind of thought that would have already been standard practice.
Well, why would my thing is I don't want the government in any capacity to limit my freedom because someone else has done something they should have done.
Yeah.
If I want to go gather with a bunch of my friends at midnight, I want to be able to do it. Even if there are 100 friends.
With loud music?
I don't even have 100 friends.
Well, yeah, even if it's loud music.
No, you can't do
Impromptu dance
that.
party?
You can't do that downtown, man. You can do that on your private property.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm saying is we are citizens of this
We
city.
do have a right to peacefully
We have
assemble.
the right to peacefully assemble.
I think if you
we
had
should
seen
be
some
able to do
videos
it
of
at any
this
time.
crowd, you would have not felt like that was a
It was not a
peaceful
peaceful
assembly. That was a
yeah,
party
don't
assembly.
misunderstand me. I'm not saying that those people were not up to no good or what I'm saying is as a blanket statement, anytime rights are infringed, it's never good in the end.
It never saves lives.
Ever.
But there are already laws against loitering.
Yeah. No,
So
you're
you can't. I mean, like,
No,
I
you're
hear
right.
what
If you're
what
just like
saying.
hanging out in the street.
But
yeah.
you like 100 of us, if we wanted to walk across Market Street Bridge, at 1 o'clock in the morning on a weekend night, we could without incident. I'm sure.
Probably, yeah.
But if we went and just kind of hung out at the entrance of Market Street Bridge and stayed there for 45 minutes
Turn
to an
it into
hour,
a
even
toll
if you
bridge.
weren't doing
You know
anything
what?
wrong,
How about all of our listeners gather there
Oh,
and
my
we'll have a
goodness.
live broadcast? 1 in the morning.
That's hilarious.
Well, we need a name. What can our name be? I don't know.
the Walnut Walkers.
The Walker Boys.
We walk at night because it's too hot down here to walk in the day.
Oh man, the heat.
Speaking about the
Are we going
heat-
to talk about the heat?
Oh, my
What
God.
I love it.
happened?
Man, I love
Psychopath.
summertime.
Bill and I are going to fight today.
I
I'm
love
already feeling
summertime.
the
I'm already
energy.
feeling the tension this morning.
Feeling the
If
energy.
do you guys like it when it's cold in the wintertime?
Yes.
I do prefer cold because there's something you can do about it. Like you can bundle up versus there's only so many clothes you can take off. When you're naked, like there's nowhere to go.
Take all of them off.
I'll tell you how bad it is. So last year we bought a brand new central heat and air unit. It was a top of the line unit,
Hey, same.
the best that we could buy. Because I was like, look, I want this to last, 50 years. The one that we had, this is probably a long story that we don't want to get into, but I will get into it briefly. So our house was built in 73. The unit that we had in the house was put in 73. And
Wow.
and the heat and air guy said, look, that unit that you have, there are low range units, there are mid range units, and there are high range units. The unit that you had was a middle of the road unit that lasted over 30 years.
Yeah, that is
Man.
ridiculous.
And I said, well, great. Well, give me a middle of the road unit that'll last me another 30. And he said, it's not going to happen.
He's like, sorry.
He said there are 3 brands you could look at. One's Carrier, one's
Yep.
Train.
and the other is American Standard. He said, you get one of those 3.
They make toilets.
It's the highest that you can get. And so we got one of those. And I said, well, what can I expect out of it? He said, you'll probably get 10 to 12 years.
Oh my God.
And I was just sick. And it was very expensive.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Hey, check out episode. I can't remember what it was.
But so all right. So we got this last year. It's worked flawlessly. It's been fine. Yesterday, I noticed with the temperature that our house at one point was about 76 degrees, and we generally don't keep our house at 76. We generally keep our house around 70 all year long.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like a good middle of the road.
so yours is having a hard time keeping up too.
And yes,
Okay,
and our house is
good.
well
It's not just
insulated.
mine.
Our house is, I mean, it's big, and we kept the front door open. Well, we just have like a glass door, and so maybe it's not well insulated there. We kept the garage door up, and the garage is insulated, but maybe some of it trapped out the garage door. I don't know, but that unit ran all day, and so I went out last night and hung out with some friends, and didn't get home till about 11. It was about 11:30 I got home, and I walked inside, and it was still 75 degrees,
Yeah.
and that unit was running continuously.
So, we just finished remodeling and got new units. We got 3 new units. So we've got a sunroom unit, which is like a split unit, and then we've got a downstairs and upstairs unit. And we're noticing like that the upstairs unit acts funny. It's like we have to keep the thermostat on a very different number. Like it's almost like it's not calibrated right. And we're trying to figure this thing out.
Maybe the thermostat's off. Like maybe you just
Let me tell you, it's not the thermostat. We got to investigating a little bit, or I did recently, and the thermostat sits on a wall that backs up to our attic. So as you can imagine, in the wintertime, it gets really cold. In the summertime, it gets really hot. So I go around and I'm looking at it because recently the unit kind of froze up. We had to have a service call on it because it just ran all day and all this junk. And he did a few minor tweaks, I think, to get that straightened up. But I got to looking at it the other day. So when you open that attic, the access door to the attic, I mean, maybe it's 140 degrees out there. I mean, it's an attic baking in the sun. All right. So I go to look, and all right, the unit's not frozen. I'm like, man, what is going on out here? Something's not right. So I go and I start looking at the wall that the thermostat's on. It is the one piece of sheetrocked wall between two studs that has no insulation on it.
Oh, no.
So, then I walked back around and I put my hand on the wall where the thermostat was, and you could feel the heat.
Yeah, because where's the thermometer on those things? I always wondered that too.
Yeah, I guess it's right in the actual unit, but either way, I've got to because Jill would be going up there. She's like, "Why is it freezing up here? Like the kids' rooms are just freezing." And yesterday it wasn't keeping up, so I'm going to have to. I plan to get some of that spray insulation.
Hey, I actually need to do that too. I was thinking we could all get together. We just buy a big can and we just.
Well, you can't do it with the cans. You got to do it with I've got a little knowledge here.
Okay,
it's called a froth pack. Ooh. Yep, it's.
Have you seen Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
That's exactly what they wore.
Yeah, you wear it around like a backpack and you spray your walls.
Oh.
But no, the stuff you're talking about, like the one can, that's more of a crack sealant. You could never get between two studs.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you're going to do like
it's a new business idea. If your house is hot,
exactly,
and it can't cool down, who you going to call?
Frostbusters.
Frostbusters. Love it.
Might need to cut that out just so that we can monetize that.
Oh yeah, we don't steal that idea.
Frothbusters.
Yeah, I always give away all my ideas. That's
in this economy, if you've got a good business idea, you got to keep it close to the vest and run with it. Because I tell you what. Well, I looked up in the Urban Dictionary. I don't know if you guys have ever checked out the Urban Dictionary. It's basically
I love Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Wikipedia of dictionaries, and it's like crowdsourced. But there's an actual entry in the Urban Dictionary of the word Bidenflation. Bidenflation. And I'll read what it says. Here's the definition of Bidenflation. I mean, you already know the definition, but here's what it.
We all know the definition.
You're feeling it every single day.
Yeah.
This is the official definition: massive inflation created by the Biden regime money printing policy. The Biden regime money printing policy. Here's the word used in a sentence. Can you believe the Bidenflation this month? It's up to 4%. This is a very old entry.
Yeah,
because it ticks up every single day.
4%.
I read a tweet yesterday. I want to go back to the air conditioner in a moment, but I read a tweet yesterday where
the exciting world of AC.
Yeah, it is very exciting. Where someone tweeted, it said, "I just read today that the inflation rate is like 7.9%, but fuel is up 100%, food's up 28%, energy's up 38%. Where are they getting this 7.9%?
Yeah.
Like, what's not up?
It's just but it's saying
actually, I have one thing, but I'm afraid if I mention it,
it'll go up. Yeah, don't.
But the one thing Biden's inflation has not touched, which I'm like, it's just my heart. It does
guitar
my heart
picks.
Good, is I don't
marijuana.
know about that.
Marijuana sales.
Hey, I don't do marijuana.
Sorry, we have a friend. We won't say his name.
Spicy peanuts. The little Hampton Farms.
Well, you know why?
Always been $1.99.
But because they made the mistake years ago of printing the price on the package.
Oh yeah,
it's like it cost them more to redo the.
Well, I read that Kraft Heinz, the company that basically produces I don't even know how many products. It used to be Heinz 57, so there were 57 varieties of different things you could buy. Now it's hundreds and thousands of different things. But anyway. They've sent out notices to all of their grocers and retailers saying there's going to be a massive increase in pricing come this fall. So we're not even into the worst part of this yet.
We've seen stuff go up at Aldi, which is like a pretty cheap place to buy stuff. Yeah. And like we used to get stuff and just get to the car and be like, I was like $20,
Oh.
you know, and now
Always
it's like,
great.
I think last time I went, I got stuff, you know, kind of it was like 70. Now I did get 2 pounds of bacon, but you know, if you take that out of there, it was like, it was going to be like $50.
Yeah,
It did not double, but I bet the prices I paid were 40% higher than typical.
Well, so just to show you how bad this is. So in our family, Tara, my wife Tara is the she's thrifty.
Yeah, my
and
wife is
she's
too.
like, we don't need to go out and get a cup of coffee because we have a coffee maker.
Yep.
And we have Folgers at home. So why don't we? No, not Folgers, but you know, just like that. That's her
I was like,
mentality.
I can't believe you do Folgers. Like,
we
I
don't do
imagine James
Folgers, but I'm
is
just saying, like, she's like, we already have coffee that we
Yeah.
bought. It's probably from Aldi.
all these coffees.
And I'm like, yeah, just to give you an example of the differences between the two of us, like when Tara was a child at Halloween, she would go around to the neighborhood and do the little trick-or-treating like all the kids did. And she'd have her bag of candy, and that bag of candy would last until like Easter. Like she would ration it out. She would say, I'm going to eat this one on this day and this one. And she would stick to that plan. And whereas when I would do trick-or-treating, I would get a ginormous bag of candy, and by 7 o'clock the next morning, I'm in a sugar coma. I'm waking up. I'm like, where am I? What happened? And there's like food, candy wrappers stuck all over me. And I'm like, man, that was incredible. What a night. That's the difference.
Oh,
Well,
that's so funny.
so when you see, that kind of, like, I'm starting to think more like, maybe we shouldn't buy that. Like, maybe we don't need to do that. So an example of this is I was at a summer camp. It was like a scouting summer camp this last week. And at the end of the camp, the camp cook, who was in charge of the mess hall, the meals and everything for the entire week, was getting ready to leave. And so he was handing out stuff like leftover food. And so there was like this ginormous block of cheese. I mean, it wasn't like a normal block. It was heavy. It was probably, 8 pounds. A big old jar of ranch dressing, a gallon of milk, and some like cold cuts. And he was like, anybody want this? I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And I actually went out of my way to drive and find a cooler because I'm like, I'm protecting this. This is like $100 worth of food.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I have got to protect this at all costs.
Oh, this is
So I
recently?
went and bought a cooler, like at a gas station, filled it up with ice because, I had like an hour drive. And I'm like, I am not risking this ranch going bad. Like,
And at
This
today's
is-
prices, that styrofoam cooler and a bag of ice was $17.50.
well, it was one of those cheap styrofoam coolers, and it was like $5. But I'm like, I would have thought, throw that away. I don't need that. I mean,
Yep.
it's just like, so it's good in some ways. It forces you to be a little bit more.
I think the
responsible.
positive thing that keeps coming in my mind is, and I can't remember where this verse is. I should have looked it up before the show.
It's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible somewhere. Second opinions.
One of these days, we're going to do some show prep.
Yeah,
And when we do, I want our listeners to know you're in trouble. Like, it's
honestly, like, so we used to do a little bit more show prep, and I honestly think our podcast got better when we didn't. It's like we overthought it a little bit too much. So there's a verse that talks about the people of God will have plenty in like times of need, or something like that. And that's the positive spin of this is, I know that I'm not going to let anybody in our church go homeless. I know nobody's going to let me and my family go homeless. And so that's like the hope that I have, is not only God's provision, but also just being a part of a community. Obviously, a Christian community is definitely the way to go. Just because.
Absolutely. No, you're exactly right.
You got to be a part of some community, because that's what it's going to take to get through this. I think people have this view of when things get tough, everybody's like, I've never even watched Mad Max, but everybody's Mad Maxing it, like, going from house to house. Like, it's the way that we survive is through forming little local economies.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned on previous episodes that we've never gone through tremendous adversity in our generation. And, I mean, this could be it. I mean, this could be
Easily.
I mean, COVID was bad. I mean, the 2-year period of that was kind of taxing in so many ways.
Sure.
But, and I said this early on, I was like, man, when I went to the grocery stores and the shelves kind of were bare, that was unnerving.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, food shortages. We don't exactly have a garden ready to feed us.
Yeah.
If we got into a position that you truly could not lay hands on food, like, because we're so dependent on our food supply, our food chain right now.
Yeah.
that it's that could be really bad. And right now you've got record inflation. Fuel prices are higher. I always say about gas, I was like, we've still never paid what it's worth. Like gas is a pretty important commodity.
It's pretty amazing
to you. But yeah, I mean, we are looking down the barrel of something that it could be some tough times. But to your point, though, Sam, I think if you really think for the average American what it does, it eliminates some of your creature comforts.
Yeah,
it doesn't, like, you're not now impoverished and starving and homeless. You're just, man, like, you've got to do without some things that you're really accustomed to doing, and that's not fun, but it's I think as of right now that could be what a lot of us are about to see.
Yeah. And I feel for the people that don't have the hope of Christ, because I know that if I starve to death, to be absent from the body is to be present with Christ, and I have something to look forward to. So I can't imagine living this life, and especially right now, without that hope.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have that hope, it definitely makes you vulnerable to the propaganda and just to the tactics of a people or a government that wants to, drive a wedge, between people, or drive you into hysteria or panic. A population that's in panic mode is a lot easier to control and a lot easier to subjugate.
Oh yeah.
Than a population of people who have hope and strength outside of the government or. So that helps. This got really deep all of a sudden.
It did.
Which is good.
Can I go back and talk about air conditioners?
I think that ship sailed.
No, dude. This is a great story. I've not told you all this one yet, have I, about my friend Jason Landers and the air conditioner debacle? Oh, guys, this is a good one. Jason, I hope you're listening. Hey, I actually had a friend over the weekend. I'll tell you a little bit about my trip to Charleston, but had a friend say, "Man, y'all have not put out a podcast in like a little bit."
Yeah,
I was like,
what the heck's up with that?
Yeah. Like, I'm like, you noticed? Like, he's
Dude,
like,
a lot of people
notice.
notice.
I get texts.
He's in a band that they're on tour right now and traveling.
Nice.
So I think he has when he's on the bus he has time to listen to stuff like us, and very grateful for that to at the Chad Gamble. Appreciate you listening and enjoyed the show this past weekend. I'll get into that in just a minute, but I've got to tell you guys about what happened to Jason. So Jason and his wife, I've told you guys, they're some of our closest friends, and Jason is the consummate host. Like, he's the guy that you look up and you realize every time you go to a really good, social get together, you're at his house.
Nice.
We're here again. And it's like, I mean, if you've ever had a lot of people over to your house, you know what goes into that.
Oh yeah.
The honeydew.
Yeah,
2-week prelude to that is pretty taxing.
It's like you work extremely hard to make people think that you didn't work hard.
Right,
the house
right.
Always looks like
house
this.
is always clean.
Yeah.
Oh, I just painted that bathroom. Just
just
wanted just for fun.
Celeste and I are always at each other's throats, and then it's like this person comes and we're like, "Hey."
Yeah,
We
exactly.
always just have potpourri in the back of the toilet and candles lit. That's what we do.
So we all go to Jason had people over for this particular occasion was the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
And it was one of these typical North Alabama Januaries or early February, whenever the Super Bowl is. It was actually kind of warm. Like, it was not a freezing cold day. It was one of those balmy, how we get them in like mid-70s.
Yeah, bring on 50 degrees and sunny. That's my go-to right there.
I do like 50 and sunny.
50's a little cold for the motorcycle. I like 60.
50 and sunny though is not bad.
So we get there, and Jason, in the typical frantic scurrying around of trying to, get everything, food prepared, the house straightened up, last minute stuff. Is there ice over there? Jason also kind of has this like little bit of panic look. Not panic, but something's not right. And we get there.
The AC went out.
The AC was out. Now typically, you need the heater
in
at this time
Alabama.
of year. But this is a day that you kind of needed the air conditioner when you had a house full of people, because it started warming up pretty quickly on the inside.
Wait, I'm sorry. Does it kind of gross you out when you're in a room full of people and you see the temperature going up and you realize it's from their body
heat? Yeah.
Is that just kind of a weird thing for you guys to think about?
I'm kind of a cuddly person, so.
Yeah, but these are like, This is not your wife. I mean, this is like,
Yeah, exactly.
this is people that you're just in a room with people, and
They're
now it's
heating it
getting
up.
hotter, and it's like, that's kind of weird.
No, you're right. You're right.
Just heating it up. So Jason's like, "Oh, guys, I'm sorry, the air went out, but don't worry, we've got a technician coming to take a look at it."
On Super Bowl Sunday.
That's what I said.
Oh my gosh.
I said,
It's gonna be
Cha-ching,
$500 an hour.
Jason, not on Super Bowl Sunday, like right before the game, you've got two guys coming out here to look at your area. And that's what I said. It's going to be two guys. It's not going to be a technician. They're sending two. Like, you're about to get it. So we start ribbing him a little bit about, oh, this is going to be bad. And we're just really trying to pile on a little bit to his anxiety. And then as a joke, we start doing an over-under. Like, what do you think this
A
service
high-low?
call is going to be?
Yeah,
Yeah, we did
high-low.
a high-low. And so, we're like, oh, is it going to be, north of 300 or south of 300? And somebody's like, no, I think it's going to be 750, and like, no,
They're
this is
placing their bets.
this is $1,000 call. And I said, no, this is a new unit. And so we're really getting him worked up over the potential of what this could
my
be.
gosh.
So the guys get there, and by then we're all watching the game or, socializing while Jason's out handling these technicians, which probably, on any other day would probably be like, yeah, we had to charge it back up with Freon and change the compressor, and that'd be $180,
Wow.
Jason comes back in, and he has this look on his face, and his wife's like, what is it? He goes, they said we need a new unit. And I was like, I told you. If
What a
you'd have
bunch
called
of terrible friends. They're all laughing. They're like, you idiot, I told you.
like, and not only that, they said one unit's not big enough for this house. We need two. We need an upstairs unit. So again, it's kind of like your scenario to where, hey, I've had this for 30 years. It seemed to have worked just fine.
Right.
Now all of a sudden that's not fine anymore.
Yeah.
You need two units,
Yeah.
upstairs, downstairs. You're just going to, so now the over-under's busted, right? We're like up to like the $8,000, $10,000
gosh,
range
dude.
because we got to, not
Easy.
if you get two units, like you got to have some duct work somewhere.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Something's got to change. And so I want to say that Jason called us later that week and was not happy with our treatment of him as he should not have been. We were not very nice friends, but he then informed me that in addition to the two units, that because he was taking on two units, there had to be some electrical upgrades as well.
Oh, my
And I'm like, this is all because it was Super Bowl
Well, I'm just
Sunday.
curious. What did he actually express frustration about the way you all acted?
Yes.
Or was he joking around,
Not
or-
only verbally, it was written all over him. Yeah. He
Oh, my
was
God.
Oh, I
not.
thought he
was not
wrote a
happy
letter
with us.
to you. I was like, wow, that's intense.
So I didn't mean for this to turn into the AC podcast, but I mentioned that last year I had to have our unit replaced. So Tara and I did that. The year before that, in 2020, I called this AC guy, and it's somebody that's like recommended within our community, people we know. And I don't think this guy did anything like nefarious or anything, but I will say, I called him just to say, look, this is a very old unit. It's always been fine for us. Never had any issues. Just come service it and make sure everything's good. He came out and the first thing he said was, well, this intake vent is much too small for this unit. I'm like, well, it's been working 30 years.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, but it's overtaxing the unit and you really need to upgrade it. So we had to basically upgrade our duct work.
Yeah.
And so he did that, and I paid for him to do that. And then the next year, the whole thing just shut down, basically. So I'm not saying that was a direct cause, but I guess there is something to be said for if you have something that's 30 years old and it's running,
And it's
just
been
let it
running through
run.
there, yeah.
Just let it run.
I used to have this old ornery former Navy guy that fixed my air conditioner when I lived in Iuka, Mississippi. And we had this flooring business, and it was a huge store. It's like, it was the size of this room, our showroom.
Wow.
Had one little unit that just, it was like the little train that could. I mean, for 30 years, it had just gone and gone. But, occasionally you'd have to have it serviced or it'd go out or whatever. And I just remember that guy coming, and he was a genius with this stuff. But I'd always ask him, I was like, well, how much longer do you think I got left on that thing? And he'd always say, until the day it quits.
Which is true.
Like, gee, thanks.
That's like saying, I've been looking and looking for my keys. It's like, where were they? Well, they were in the last place I looked. It's like, well, of course they were.
That phone's ringing every time I hear it.
Hey, can we talk about the review?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, so
we just left it at that. Like we never talked about it.
No, we did. Yeah,
we have two reviews. We have a review that we got. This unfortunately was a 1-star review, but it was from a pretty high profile person. Who was that, Yule?
Well, he's not nearly as famous as his wife, but he's Mr. Pelosi.
Mr. Pelosi.
Yes.
Paul. Is his name Paul?
Paul Pelosi. He wrote us in. He wrote us an email, and it's a little unnerving, actually.
Yeah, there are some political people you don't want to make angry.
Yeah, we probably
not
maybe
quite on the Clinton level, but
was it about the leaked audio that we got our hands on? Well, what does he want us to do? I mean, we didn't create it. We didn't.
It's not what
we didn't doctor it at all. We just played it.
We aired it. That's the problem.
So they're mad that we aired it.
Yeah.
So he says, dearest gentlemen of the HYHAT podcast.
At least he said dearest.
Yeah, it sounds like he might be a real gentleman.
I had to spend a little time sending you this email, but it will be short because I'm having to send this from the county jail public computer, and I only have 3 minutes. Little did you know, the leaked audio that you played last week on your podcast had far-reaching negative effects on my family and me.
Oh, no.
I have been framed, charged with a DUI.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's right. I did hear about that. I read that that
and
happened.
I am now in the county jail, an innocent man, all because I'm a victim of the system.
So was he like depressed, and then because we leaked the audio, and then he just went to drinking?
Hold on.
This is not the first time,
clarify?
by the way. There's been multiple offenses.
In the grand scheme of things, a blood alcohol content of 0.11 is nothing to me. Nancy and I typically drink well into the 0.2 range before driving home. We are victims.
I think that's also her approval rating, isn't it? 0.2.
We are victims of a corrupt system whereby the police exerted tremendous authority over my ability to drive autonomously home.
Huh.
Wow. They really care about the rights.
I will bail out later this
Yeah,
morning
right.
because, fortunately, we do have a few political connections here in California.
Huh.
I wish you gentlemen nothing but the best.
Oh.
You do make me laugh.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I even listen to you on my drive home. But the leaked audio was a bit too much, and you will never know the detriment it has caused to my family and myself.
Well.
Therefore, I can only leave you 1 star.
It's better than a death threat, so that's good.
Well, Mr. Paul Pelosi, I hate it that you wrecked your brand new $80,000 Porsche on your way home to get.
Did he really?
It was, yeah. On your way home to get ice cream out of your $25,000 refrigerator. All I can say is, we did not mean you any harm. And if I were to see you, I would give you a hug. Tell you it's all going to be okay.
I just want to know how someone can afford to put gas in a Porsche in California right now.
Yeah, it's like $8 a gallon right now in California.
It's crazy.
Do you think that right before he fills up, he calls Nancy and she turns that knob down that we were talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
Gas goes down to like 99 cents. He fills
Maybe
up.
that's why he crashed his Porsche. Maybe he's like, I can't take it no more. He just drove right into a pylon.
Even for me, this gas is too high.
All right, so that was a 1-star review, and
we got a 3-star review on Apple Podcasts.
All right.
James actually wants to read. No, I'm saying.
I do not want to read this.
It's long.
It is.
Brace
long.
yourselves.
So this is from Pumpkin Eater 500. Love the username. Sorry it took us this long to read
Peter?
it.
I mean, do people actually create names like this whenever they like?
I don't know.
I was going to leave us a podcast. I was going to leave a review of our own podcast just to drive up our numbers. But I was like, well, I don't have a code name. And is it going to put my real name? So I just didn't do it.
You'll be back. I love this podcast.
Who's this?
So Pumpkin Eater 500 says, I have enjoyed the stories told on this podcast. Sam, Yule, James, Samuel and James, have great personalities that complement each other well. The jokes have made me laugh out loud several times, especially at Artichoke. It seems that episode 7 is when the deep discussions really began. I agree.
We had a 6-episode lead in to anything of substance.
What the heck happened in episode 7? We're gonna have to go back and
episode 7 was arguably one of our
what
best
was it?
ones.
I don't even remember what that was.
I think Artichoke was in there. It was really good.
Huh.
It's one of my favorites. After listening to episode 7 specifically, I have a few questions. How would each of you define a strong man?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Is it bad to not have significant adversity in life?
Not at all.
A major war.
No, that is bad. What are you
Okay,
talking
we'll
about?
talk about it. Hold on.
No, I don't want to talk about this.
Do you think the government involved in COVID saved any lives? My personal answer is no to that, but I'll expound. How would each of you have handled COVID if you were in positions of authority? I have a specific answer for that. As a loyal listener, I feel that the overall quality of the podcast could be raised if there was more of an emphasis put on the positive aspects of our world. It is easy to point out the negatives. However, a positive moment would be appreciated. This podcast has been a source of entertainment as well as thought-provoking questions. I look forward to the discussion, stories, and jokes each week. Well, thank you, Pumpkin Eater. I thought that was a pretty thoughtful review as far as just some good questions there.
Well, they definitely put a lot of effort into the
that's why I wanted to
their questions. So we don't want to just totally write them off, but
Here's my first thought. Pumpkin Eater says, it'd be nice if your podcast was a little more positive. Now, how would you handle COVID? Oh, great. Yeah, that's a.
Well, I would have never released it from the Wuhan lab. That's how I would have handled it.
So, I mean, I would say and I mentioned this a little earlier, I think, from what I remember, is that in answer to the COVID stuff, I don't think when the government restricts people's freedoms that ever leads to a saving of lives. And I mean, that's a philosophy that I have that you might disagree with. I think none of the measures they took, they actually came out later and pretty much said every measure wasn't effective, like the masks.
Well, we're
They
seeing the data
admitted
now
masks.
and like hand
They
over
admitted
fist.
the lockdowns killed more people.
The
because
lockdowns
of
had a
depression.
detrimental effect. The masks have had a detrimental effect. The
So just
vaccines have had a detrimental effect. All of it.
What
Every
the
single part of
CDC
it.
says about their own measures, and you'll see that they were not effective. And as far as how I would have handled COVID, I would have left more or less everything alone. The one government program that I would have done, if I felt like it needed to be, if I was just like king of the U.S., is I would have, because we would have saved so much money as a country if we had just done this, is partner with a company like Postmates or Uber Eats or any of these companies that deliver stuff, and literally give them a government grant and say, anything you want delivered, literally anything, call this number and we'll have somebody deliver it to you. If you're afraid to go out of your house, here it is. We would have saved so much money than paying everybody's salary
here's the problem.
for like 6 months straight.
Had there not been mandatory lockdowns, very few people would have just stayed home.
Well, exactly.
I was watching
the people that
And we would have gotten herd immunity very quickly,
Exactly.
and it would have been all
because
behind
it just
us.
delayed the inevitable.
Yeah.
And like they said, the hospitals were going to be overwhelmed, but really the hospitals always run at capacity. I remember doing EMT school, and Hamilton Medical Center on a random Wednesday was like people were out in the halls and stuff like that. So that's normal for hospitals. It's just to run at this like very high capacity. But
let's go back to the lockdown thing. So I
want to go back to
apply.
what you said a minute ago too about the actual origin of this. Like, if we're gonna have a serious conversation about it, that's something you don't hear. You don't hear. Well, let's go back to 2019 and start looking at what happened in the summer of 2019.
So, but let me say on the lockdowns, I recall seeing pictures of gentlemen, I think at a football game. This is like an old black and white photo of men at a football game during the Spanish flu epidemic, and they had on masks. And so I was like, okay, that's not a bad idea. Like, if I go to the doctor, or the dentist, oftentimes if he has a cold or something, he might put on a mask to kind of safeguard me from droplets and
The droplets.
The droplets. So I get that. I understand reducing transmission, but what really took it south, in my opinion, was being told you can't go anywhere and you have to wear like it's mandatory. You go in. This is not on your own. This is not up to you. Mm-hmm. This is the government saying if you don't do it, and people getting arrested for like walking on a beach really alone. And it was just the oversight. And we talked about this on one of the podcasts about, I think, the governor of Illinois saying, if you go out on a boat, 2 at a time. But we're going to ride in the car.
You never quarantine the healthy. You quarantine the sick. You don't quarantine the healthy. And then they just came out recently. And like asymptomatic transmission really, they've realized wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
We heard about this for 6 months. Even if you don't feel sick, you don't want to kill grandma.
I love it when they came out. They're like, you might have COVID and not even know you have it. I'm like, that sounds awesome.
Well,
I want that disease.
You don't even know you have
that's
it.
That's a good one.
Would
you like a virus that when you get it, you don't even know you have it?
Yes, please. The other thing about this, and this gets a little complex on government, right? Is government is supposed to be separate from the media. Right, like they're not. I mean, we have seen we have seen such crazy restrictions on speech that it's mind-boggling to me. Listen, this is an aside, but let me make my original point, and then I'll do my aside after that. Yeah. My original point is when you are fed a ticker, a death ticker, a case ticker. Like on the news every single day, it's the number one headline of here's how many people have died, here's how many people are sick, and like I'm thinking, how are they they send me a postcard about the census asking me do I live there? Like you sent it with my name on it, like I'm here, kind of thing. It just baffled me how much that was driven to the American public to cause fear and pandemonium. And, it's about ratings. Like, we know that.
You could do that with chicken pox and it would be scary.
Exactly. Monkeypox. I mean, there's like 9 active cases right now somewhere. And so I think it's just baffling that when the media, and I guess my point is, you don't want, and I'm doing this to frame it to say to this gentleman, what would I have done differently? I would have really tried to have encouraged, had I been in leadership, the media. Like, I'm not saying downplay this, but run with normal news cycles. Like you are causing pandemonium in this country by staying with this narrative 24/7, and the fact that Anthony Fauci was on the news every single day. Yeah. It's just, it was mind-boggling.
We all know that the news media had an agenda in 2020. Like, this was all working toward a common goal. And honestly, let's be very frank about it. The common goal in 2020 was Orange Man bad. Yep. Get rid of Trump. Well, that was the goal.
That was my aside, James, is when you have, and we've had the advent now of social media platforms, right? But that's just another opportunity for free speech. It is mind blowing to me, and I get it. Like, I understand that stupid people say stupid things, and they say things that are hurtful. They say things that are hateful. But we grew up with people saying hateful things. That's why we were taught a little jingle as kids that sticks and stones can break your bones, but words should not hurt you. And to me, it absolutely sets a precedent that I'm fearful of, that the president of the United States could be banned from a platform by which to message people. I don't care if you liked what he had to say or not. The fact that a platform with that kind of reach and that kind of authority can say, you're not talking here anymore, that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, that's true. Like, that power over the president. I mean, I don't know. That's crazy.
And so, one more thought that I have, because this commenter wants us to be positive and then wants us to talk about COVID. So if I were in charge, and I had governmental authority and overreach, what I would have done and what we haven't done to any extent, as far as I can see, is actually go back and say, what happened here?
Yeah.
Like, what happened with this virus?
Yeah.
So I think we know more and more now. Of course, so back to our news media. Our news media in America is run by 6 billionaire corporations. 6. And I guarantee you, and I know this is true because I've researched it, those 6 corporations are pushing narratives and their version of truth and reality that I guarantee you, Pumpkin Eater, would go against what you believe. But
even Fox News, I don't even listen to
Fox News,
Yeah.
even Fox News. And so, to your point, Yul, about the death ticker and the continual breaking news, it is done intentionally to stir you up, to get you fearful, and nobody in those 6 billionaire corporations will allow any discussion about how COVID-19 landed on American soil.
Yeah.
But what we know from testimonies, what we know from just what little research that has been done, is that there was genetic manipulation done on a virus in a lab in Wuhan. And we know that there were people within our own National Institutes of Health, a la Anthony Fauci, and others who paid for that research to happen, who paid for those viruses to be weaponized. There was testimony, I don't know if you guys remember this, a Chinese cellular biologist from Wuhan testified that looking at this virus, you can examine it on like a molecular level and you can see how those cells were genetically altered.
It's crazy.
Like they were, and I think the term she used was cut marks. So you could see like, it's almost like if you work in a nursery and you're trying to come up with a new variety of a plant.
Yeah.
And you grow a little bit of a stalk of this plant, and then you cut it, and then you graft another plant into it to make a different variety. That's exactly how this was manipulated in this lab in Wuhan.
That's crazy.
Gain of function.
Gain of function is the term.
And had we not had
why do they even do that stuff? Like, why like?
Because there are governments that want to use things like that to control people. Well, and that's exactly what's happened.
Had we not had a physician in the U.S. Senate, Rand Paul, calling people out for gain of function and basically calling the science exactly what it was. It's like, you can't talk around this.
And Anthony Fauci denied that, but then he was describing
and Rand Paul sitting there, this is exactly like
no, these politicians are. I mean, it's just like, this is the life of a politician. Like, I'm a politician. Ask me what I'm going to have for lunch, Sam.
What are you going to have for lunch, James?
At your next fundraiser?
I think lunch is a great American institution. I think we all should be having lunch. I think it's one of those things that everybody should do.
Go out and eat an ice cream cone today.
It's like I ask you what you're having for lunch. Yeah. Are you telling me that lunch is not important for the kids? Is that what you're saying? It's just like, just answer the question. So you're right. Rand Paul was all over Fauci for that.
Yeah, I'm not a huge conspiracy theory guy, and I'm not by any stretch saying that this is what happened. So never take my opinion as like that I'm stating it as fact. But I will tell you a theory that has crossed my mind multiple times is that the Chinese the Chinese government is a notorious government, and in modern times you should know all about.
Yeah, I don't think anybody
what the
would
Chinese government has done for population control.
Yeah, the Uyghurs, the Muslims in China, the slave labor. I mean, they are basically modern day slave traders.
Forced sterilization, forced abortion. We've watched documentaries about people in China who've accidentally had the second girl, and like the lengths that they have to go to protect that child's life.
I know.
And get them out, smuggle them out, and it's crazy.
Or if you're rich enough, you can buy off the government, because that's how communists work.
Well, that's right. They've either got to come up with the funds to pay off the authorities, the local authorities, and so. My theory is that there were two ways that the Chinese government had something to gain by intentionally releasing something like this. One, they were okay with collateral damage to their own population.
Well, they have an old population. They have kind of like us. They have a very heavy older people population that they're going to have a hard time supporting. So
there was a quote that I read years ago. I think it was around one of the world wars, to where China basically said, if you want war with us, that's fine. You can take 1,000 of ours. to the 1 of yours that we take, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
And,
Well, they
you
have
know,
a billion people there. So.
That's the point. And so I think intentional population control, I'm not saying they released it on their own people for population control. I'm saying they released it as a form of germ warfare against the entire world, being quite okay with the collateral damage it would do to its own populace. And so
there's a fine line there, but yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's a fine line though between them saying, and if we happen to lose a few people, that's okay. And there's a fine line between that and them saying, maybe we can lose a few old people. I don't know where that actually is. That's
and
a
who
gray
knows?
area there.
This is all theoretical.
Yeah.
But you can see what they would have to gain that fits their kind of regime's way of doing things.
Because honestly, Donald Trump and the American economy was eating their lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look, we were trending back to America first, doctrine. We were trending toward we're not going to be taken advantage of by the Chinese anymore, which has basically happened since the 70s. Like that had been growing and growing. And that was shifting. It was changing. And, we went into 2020 with the strongest economy we've ever had. We went into 2020 with people actually feeling good about the direction the country was headed.
A lot of companies were predicting, I remember I worked for a mattress firm at the time. They're predicting it was going to be their best year ever.
Yeah. I mean, we had gas prices were like $1.60 a gallon.
Yep. Beautiful.
The food prices were low. Unemployment was down to record levels. Every demographic.
Interest rates were
low.
lows.
Yeah. Like African American people, Hispanic people, they were working. People were like feeding their families. They were, and you know what? They actually, those demographics were voting and supporting Donald Trump as well. And then, bam, something happened.
It was funny when they tried to make America first be like, they're like, that's racist.
That's
it's
wrong.
It's like, are these not Americans?
Right.
Like, are they not going to benefit from America first policy?
Right. Every other country in the world can secure their borders and love their country and want their citizens to be prosperous. But when we do it, that's racist. That's wrong.
I think where Trump was so different was that he had not spent his life grooming a message. Like you said, what'd you have for lunch? Well, I think lunch is a great thing. All Americans should have lunch. He just was not going to buy into talking like that.
No, it was an exact opposite. Yeah, what'd you have for lunch, Donald? Ham and cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
Next.
The best.
Yeah. No, it was McDonald's.
The best.
McDonald's.
The best Big Mac ever.
The best. Look, so again, we are seeing now the whatever, however COVID manifested itself is going to have much more lasting impact economically, socially, than it did over the 2 years. The economy tanking as it is now, the bear market we're going to go into, the recession that's coming, the inflation that's already here, no end in sight.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: you can't print your money. You can't print money to get out of this now.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what the solution is. I truly don't know what the solution is. But we are in a. Is this uplifting enough?
I think
Pumpkin
it is.
Eater.
Well, this is
Pumpkin Eater, this is my advice for you. Don't be so quick to trust people who have done nothing to gain your trust and who don't deserve it and who constantly prove themselves over and over again as being untrustworthy.
Right.
Don't trust these people.
Yeah.
I mean, a perfect example is you have the Department of Education out of Washington, which is an unconstitutional agency. It never
I'd get
should.
rid of all those agencies.
The government has no authority. The federal government has no authority to run education for the country. No. So, but a perfect example of what you just said, Sam, is an educational system that continuously fails. And when they fail, they say, well, we just need more of your money.
We just need more money.
We need more of your money and more of your children's time, and then we'll get it better. It's like you've been practicing this in a compulsory fashion.
Yeah.
Basically means you've compelled us to do this for over a century. But yet the literacy rate has gone down.
Yeah.
Kids are actually coming out of school less prepared, less educated, less able to think for themselves. And your response is, we need more of their time and more of your money? Why would you do that?
Do you not think it's one of the biggest disappointments of the entire educational system that we are the only really, first world people who are not bilingual? We speak English, and that's it. You go anywhere else in the world and you'll meet people 2, 3, 4, 6 languages. It's like,
yeah,
man, I've heard the theories that we live so far.
Yeah, I mean,
on
we're pretty
average
isolated
from another language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I
it probably
mean-
is going to change with Spanish, like with just so heavy of a
well,
Yeah, I mean,
Hispanic
if you lived
population.
in Germany, that's a little different because you've got England, right?
Yeah.
Pretty in close proximity. You have France in close
And also,
proximity.
English is kind of the standard language of the world. Like it's somebody was telling me that they're from it was somebody from India, I think, and they were saying that they can't, their dialect doesn't understand like another dialect,
Yeah.
so they both speak English because they can both understand English. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a unifying.
But my
language
point
several
is,
places.
we're not only are we not bilingual,
agree.
we're graduating people in the double-digit percentile ranges in many public schools who are illiterate.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like in general.
If you go back and you read the history of compulsory education laws,
doesn't work.
If you look at in the late or the mid 1800s when the governments were compelling people to send their kids to a government-funded school, the literacy rate in America was about, if I remember this right, somewhere around like 96 to 98%. That was before the government compelled people to give up their children so that they could educate them.
It's not about literacy.
No, and what's the literacy rate today? It's low 90s
Really?
at best.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's dumb because then you get people in there that don't want to be there. So then everything has to come down. Everything has to be dumbed down for that person to pass.
So speaking of it, not illiteracy, but the people also right now. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. Is how can I say this kindly? I have a lot of grace for improper grammar. A whole lot of grace.
Sure.
I use it. I have a whole lot of grace for people who don't know better, who write without proper, grammar and punctuation and things like that. But when you have made it to a newsroom and you are over a news
Dude, it's
station's
crazy.
social media account,
Yeah.
and you can't string two sentences
I know.
together, it baffles me. Like, how do these people get a job?
I rarely read a news article without some huge grammatical errors in
glaring
it.
errors. That's funny. I just don't read enough news.
And
I
I'm talking
guess.
about syntax. I'm talking about terminology, definitions, misused words, commas, punctuation being out of place.
Commas are hard, man. No, commas are hard. It's semicolons that are hard. Like when do you use a semicolon?
Oh, dude, a semicolon is great. So, all right.
Anyway,
How long do you want your pause?
What do you want to do after the pause? Here's one of my biggest pet peeves talking about grammar. I hate when people can't get the whole. If I were saying this sentence, Sam gave Yule and I a cup of coffee. Okay, that's grammatically correct.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Because, yeah, it is. Sam gave Yule and, sorry, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I was like, it's
you're absolutely
me.
right. Sorry,
It's
I'm
me.
That's
confusing
an
myself.
object
Take the other
pronoun.
person
Because
out.
it's the direct object of the sentence versus the subject of the
Sam
sentence.
gave Yule and me.
So Sam gave Yule and me. But what you see is all the time you see people say, Sam gave Yule and I a cup of coffee.
We just witnessed it. Right
Yule and
I
I
know.
received a cup of coffee.
So
from
yeah,
Sam.
if we turn that back to say that we are the subject of the sentence, you would say Yule and I
One an easy way
received a
to
cup of coffee.
remember that, podcast listeners, is just take the other person out, and does the sentence still make sense?
That's right.
That's-
You wouldn't say, Sam gave I a cup of
Yeah,
coffee.
Exactly. That's
Right.
a little
And
trick.
that's really easy if you do
it's
it
just
that
subject pronouns and object pronouns. So easy. I'm a big Oxford comma fan.
way. Oh, I am
This
too.
new generation,
I know.
They're just wanting to
Oxford.
just run on.
The
and
Oxford
on.
comma
Comma?
needs to stay in the English
What is
language.
that?
Hey, when y'all were, I went to public school. Did y'all go to public school? No, you
No,
didn't.
I
You
was
No
went to
comment.
school. So it was always funny to me, like when the teacher would have people read out
Did you
loud.
just say teach?
No, the teacher
Oh, you
would
said
have people read.
Teach.
When teach would make us read.
So I'm going to read something right here. It says, "We are wrapping up day one of Camp Udi with the Chattanooga Zoo and Greg Roy's martial arts." I'm just reading something random off of, a post.
Yeah.
We've been so busy making pottery, capitalized. Interesting.
Pottery.
We have been so busy making pottery, woodworking, learning how to paint with watercolor, draw perspective, making bread, and so much more. Okay. I'm not saying you got to read with all that, excitement in your voice. But when I'll never forget this, growing up, people would say that. We are wrapping up day one of Camp Udi with the Chattanooga Zoo and Greg Roy's martial arts. We have been so busy making pottery, woodworking, learning how to paint with watercolor, draw perspective, making bread, and so much. I'm like,
Wait, who was this?
Kids that would read out loud in class. They would just read like it was like they were just reading the word out loud. They weren't reading a sentence. They weren't reading.
Because they'd never been taught about voice inflection and tone.
And then here's the other thing that got on my nerves so bad is they would get to a word they didn't know, and the teacher would say it, and then they would just keep going. Like it was already said for them, so they're going to move on. It's like, I think the teacher said that so you could say it and learn it, so the next time. Anyway.
You're like, thanks, teacher.
Do you guys read aloud at home? Like around the table? Do you like Bible or anything?
We just give our kids an iPad. Just let me off.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just joking.
So that's why Sam doesn't know the Oxford comma.
No, we definitely read a lot.
So the Oxford comma is like in that what you just read. There's 4 or 5 things being listed in a series, and they're all separated by a comma.
Yep. Is that the Oxford comma?
The Oxford comma is the last comma in the series.
Before the and.
Oh,
yeah. Do you put a comma? Or
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The Oxford comma
I'm pro comma. I want to put as many of those things in there as possible.
I hope you're not. I hope you're not pro apostrophe because that drives me crazy too. It's when something's plural, but people put an apostrophe as though it's possessive. Like when they say, I just bought. Like if someone says, for example, I just bought 3 gallons of milk, and they put gallon apostrophe S.
Oh, I don't notice that too often.
We saw in Charleston, and this really drives me crazy, is when you go to a professional sign maker, and you have a sign made, and they put an apostrophe in a plural word that has no business. Like, how do you not catch that?
Have you seen the Reddit thread of like suspicious, suspicious like quotations or whatever? I forget what it's called. That's not what it's called, but it's like essentially like people are like, we've got pottery, and then they put it in quotes, like, and it's like, and like you read it like, you know.
I took a picture.
We love our customers.
I took a picture of a sign in rural Mississippi one time. I loved it. It said, and it may still be on my phone somewhere. Like I took this picture years ago, loved it. Just a regular printed sign. They printed it on a printer, hung it up in the window of a gas station. It said no lottering, LOTTERING, no lottering. And then it said, this means hanging around drinking beer in the parking lot. So I thought lottering meant buying lottery tickets, but
here's a little grammar riddle if you want to entertain your family members with this. I was listening to this radio show, and it's a show that I like, and they do a trivia Friday every Friday. And so someone called in and gave this riddle and see if the guys could guess it. And he said, give me an example of a time when you would see in a sentence the word and, okay, A-N-D, and, don't look.
Sorry.
On my paper.
Sorry.
So the word and 5 times in a row in a sentence, and it still actually be grammatically correct.
Oh my gosh!
And like a real sentence.
Is it when you're reading a direct quote from Nancy Pelosi?
And. All right, you want me to just tell you?
Yeah.
So in the example the guy gave, he said, all right, imagine the scenario where you have a sign maker who makes a sign for this little seafood shop somewhere out on the coast. And the shop is on the sign that says fish and chips. And so the sign maker finishes the sign, and the owner of the restaurant calls and says, hey, I like everything about the sign. You did a good job, except I do have one complaint. He said, the space between fish and chips is a little off. So you got fish and chips.
Can I tell you guys about my Charleston trip briefly?
I don't think we have time to do all this.
No, brief trip and a nice shout out to a dear friend of mine.
Do you want to give a lot of detail or just do it really quick?
I gotta leave.
It's
in 3
very
minutes.
quick.
All right. Is it 3 minutes?
I've got 2.
Okay, sweet.
Good friend growing up all the way through college.
There's no way this is going 2 minutes.
Me and Charlie went back to 3rd grade.
We met when we were knee-high to a grasshopper.
He's like, we played golf one time. Okay, good grief.
We met when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, but I'm going to tell you before that. No, the Chad Gamble. Chad Gamble's a good buddy of mine. He's an accomplished drummer in a very famous rock and roll band. And we were able, while we were in Charleston, it coincided with a concert that they were putting on.
Heck yeah.
And so he was gracious enough to host us at that concert. And I'll tell you how big his band is. Guess who opened for him?
Bruce Springsteen.
Sheryl Crow.
Oh, my goodness.
What band is this?
Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit.
I'm going to look them up.
So Chad has been with them since, I guess, 2010 10, I think. And anyway, he had us there, had us backstage after the show to hang out a little bit. It was great to see him, and it was his birthday, so it was just a great time to catch up with him. And he's the one that said, when do you put another?
They were at Riverbend.
Yeah, they were there. I think that's Sunday night.
The
right?
Jason Isabel, you're talking about that?
Isbell.
They were
Yeah, he's a native of the Shoals area where I'm from, Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Jason and Jimbo Hart, who's the bass player, and Chad Gambler, all from that neck of the woods. And but I'll tell you what, man, to watch somebody come up through the music industry and be successful, and I can't tell you the number of things that Chad has done that I would call him and be like, man, I just can't believe I just saw you, for example, on Letterman for the second time.
Nice.
But to then,
which one is he?
He's the one on the right. And so,
oh, nice.
But to go to a show and say, man, like Sheryl Crow sold like 40 million records, and she just opened for you, like that's a pretty cool thing.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. And by the way, Sheryl Crow, I don't know, she's like 90 years old now, I think.
She's your age.
Yeah. She started out, she and Michael Caine and I go way back. But she started out like,
oh,
hey,
man, I'm worried now that Sheryl Crow is going to review this podcast.
Oh,
I'm
oh,
so scared.
Cheryl, you did a
We
great
love
job.
you, Sheryl Crow.
But she's
every day is a winding road. I just want you to know that.
She's as beautiful as she's ever been. Her voice is spot on. But she started the show saying, I'm going to sing a few songs from about 30 years back. And I'm like, oh, no, really? And like those big hits, from Tuesday Night Music Club was like when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So
a long time ago.
But yeah, great show. Thank you, Chad, for hanging out with us for a little bit. And we had a blast. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to the Have Y'all Heard About This podcast. If you have any feedback for us, especially if you want us to talk about, a really positive, something really positive. I don't know, like Death Row.
Death Row. We have been teasing the Death Row podcast. This is the Death Row podcast.
Our very first episode, you said this is not going to be a podcast about Death Row, which I wholeheartedly agree with.
Serious or something like that. Really
well, listen, we want your feedback, just not about this podcast. Not about this episode.
Welcome to the Death Row podcast.
We hope you had fun listening today. We were ill-prepared, maybe not our best effort, admittedly, but I hope you find the nuggets in this one, and keep listening. Write us a review.
The Have Y'all Heard About This podcast is produced by Play It By Ear Audio. Leave us a review, like us, rate us, or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. If you wish to contact us or you have a suggestion for the show, email us at hyhatpodcast@gmail.com.